See that monkey fumbling with our food? Vikram Patel's voice dripped with scorn in Hindi, his words slicing through the elegant hum of Saffron Heights, a high-end restaurant in Chicago. Isha Carter, a stunning 29-year-old black woman, her sleek straight hair tied in a neat bun, glided through the dining room in her crisp, cream-colored server uniform, pouring masala chai with flawless precision. Vikram, a 52-year-old billionaire of Indian descent, commanding a $70 billion real estate and tech empire, sat at the VIP table with five American businessmen. As Aisha served paneer tikka, he sneered in Hindi, "Bet she's never heard of Mumbai." The businessmen chuckled awkwardly, clueless to the language but eager to impress Vikram for a lucrative contract. Aisha's serene face betrayed no reaction, but her sharp eyes glinted with resolve. A master's in South Asian Studies from the University of Chicago and 3 years at the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi meant she understood every venomous word. When Vikram demanded more tea in deliberately broken English, her subtle smile masked a simmering fury. What will Aisha do with this hidden knowledge? Can one server turn a billionaire's arrogance into his downfall? Stick around to find out, and please subscribe to catch every twist of this gripping tale. Share in the comments where you're watching from, what time it is, and if you're hooked, rate it 1 or 0 if it's not your vibe. Will justice prevail? You'll want to see this through. The clink of crystal glasses and the soft murmur of Chicago's elite filled Saffron Heights, where chandeliers cast golden light over tables draped in ivory linen. Aisha Carter, a striking 29-year-old black woman, moved with quiet grace, her sleek, straight hair tied in a neat bun, her cream-colored server uniform pristine against her skin. She poured masala chai with the precision of a dancer, each motion deliberate, as if defying the weight of the gazes around her. At the VIP table, Vikram Patel, a 52-year-old billionaire of Indian descent, lounged with the confidence of a man who owned half the city's skyline. His $70 billion empire in real estate and tech made him a titan, and the five American businessmen seated with him, John Reynolds, Mark Sullivan, and their colleagues, hung on his every word, their smiles strained, their eyes darting to secure a contract that could redefine their futures. "Banderia," Vikram sneered in Hindi, his voice low but sharp, slicing through the table's chatter as Aisha set down a platter of paneer tikka, its spices wafting in the air. "Look at this monkey thinking she can serve Indian food. Bet she's never heard of Mumbai." The businessmen chuckled nervously, not understanding the language but catching the venom in his tone. They shifted in their seats, ties loosened, faces flushed from wine and the pressure to please. Aisha's expression remained serene, her full lips curved in a practiced smile, but her dark eyes flickered with a fire only those who knew her would recognize. She understood every syllable, her mind sharpened by a master's in South Asian Studies from the University of Chicago and 3 years navigating diplomatic circles at the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi. Vikram's words were a blade, but she was no stranger to cuts. "More chai," Vikram barked in deliberately broken English, waving his hand as if swatting a fly. "You know chai, yes? Or too hard for you?" The table erupted in forced laughter, John Reynolds' eyes darting to Aisha with a hint of unease. She nodded, her bun gleaming under the chandelier's glow, and refilled his cup with a steady hand. Inside, her pulse quickened, not from fear but from a rage she'd learned to cage. For 6 months, she'd served at Saffron Heights, her elegance a shield against the daily slights of patrons who saw only her skin and uniform. But Vikram's cruelty was different. Calculated, gleeful, a performance for his audience of sycophants. She caught the eye of Maria, a fellow server, who frowned slightly, sensing the tension. Aisha gave a subtle nod, her calm a mask for the storm brewing within. Vikram leaned back, his silk suit catching the light as he continued in Hindi, oblivious to Aisha's comprehension. "In America, they call this progress, letting people like her serve at a place like this. In India, she'd be sweeping floors." His lips curled into a smirk, and Mark Sullivan, desperate to stay in Vikram's good graces, forced a laugh, though his eyes avoided Aisha's. She placed a dish of saffron rice before him, her movements fluid, her beauty a quiet defiance against the ugliness of Vikram's words. She'd heard worse in her life, whispers in boardrooms, slurs in backrooms. But this was personal. Vikram wasn't just insulting her. He was insulting the very culture he claimed to embody, the one she'd studied and lived, from the poetry of Tagore to the rituals of Diwali. Aisha's mind flashed to a moment in New Delhi, standing before a room of diplomats, her voice steady as she explained trade nuances, her presence commanding respect. That was before a colleague's betrayal, a false accusation of leaking sensitive data, had derailed her career. Cleared but shunned, she'd taken this job to support her younger brother's college tuition and to gather stories for a book on social prejudice. Each night at Saffron Heights, she observed, cataloging the arrogance of men like Vikram. Tonight, though, his words were more than data points. They were a challenge. As she cleared a plate, her fingers brushed the phone in her pocket, its recording app silently capturing every venomous word. She wasn't just a server, she was a scholar, a survivor, and tonight, perhaps, a reckoning. Paneer tikka, how do you make? Vikram asked in mocking English, his eyes glinting with malice. You know the recipe, or just carry a plate like a good monkey? The table's laughter grew louder, but John Reynolds shifted uncomfortably, his fingers tightening around his glass. Aisha met Vikram's gaze, her smile unwavering. It's marinated in yogurt and spices, grilled to perfection, sir, she replied in flawless English, her voice smooth as silk. Would you like me to explain the recipe in detail? The question hung in the air, a subtle dare. Vikram blinked, caught off guard, but recovered with a scoff. No need, just bring more. He switched back to Hindi, muttering, She thinks she's clever. Aisha turned away, her heart pounding, but her steps steady. The restaurant's opulence faded into the background as she focused on the weight of her plan. She knew Vikram's type, men who wielded wealth like a weapon, blind to the strength of those they deemed beneath them. But Aisha was no victim. Her education, her time in India, her resilience, they were her arsenal. As she passed Maria, who whispered, You okay? Aisha nodded, her eyes sharp. She was more than okay. She was ready. Vikram's arrogance was a fuse, and she held the match. The question wasn't if she'd strike, it was when. And as the night unfolded, Saffron Heights would witness a clash that would leave no one untouched. Aisha Carter's cream-colored uniform gleamed softly as she slipped into the staff room of Saffron Heights, the clatter of the dining room fading behind her. The sting of Vikram Patel's words, Banderia, sweeping floors, echoed in her mind, each syllable a spark igniting her resolve. Her sleek, straight hair, tied in a neat bun, caught the dim light as she leaned against a locker, her breath steady but her heart racing. At 29, she'd faced prejudice before, but tonight's venom felt personal, a deliberate assault not just on her, but on the culture she'd immersed herself in. She pulled her phone from her pocket, the recording app still running, capturing every poisonous word Vikram had uttered in Hindi. Her dark eyes, sharp with purpose, scanned the screen. This wasn't just an insult, it was evidence, a weapon she could wield. Her mind drifted to New Delhi, 3 years prior, where she'd stood in a marble-floored embassy hall, her voice commanding as she briefed diplomats on trade protocols. Aisha, then a rising star in cultural analysis, had dazzled with her knowledge of South Asian traditions, from the intricacies of Diwali to the cadence of Tagore's poetry. A senior Indian official had once clasped her hand saying, You understand us better than we do. That memory burned now, a stark contrast to the humiliation Vikram dished out. A year ago, a jealous colleague's false accusation, leaking confidential data, had shattered her career. Cleared by an investigation, Aisha still found doors closed, her reputation tarnished by whispers. She'd chosen to work at Saffron Heights, not out of desperation, but purpose, to fund her brother Jamal's college tuition and to gather stories for a book on social prejudice. Each shift a lesson in human nature. The staff room door creaked, and Maria, her fellow server, poked her head in. Aisha, you holding up? That guy's a jerk. Aisha's lips curved into a faint smile, her beauty radiating even in the cramped space. I've dealt with worse, she said, her voice steady but laced with steel. Maria frowned, unconvinced. He's talking like you're invisible. You don't have to take that. Aisha nodded, her bun unmoving as she straightened. I'm not invisible, Maria. He'll see that soon enough. She tucked her phone back into her pocket, the recording a ticking bomb. Maria's concern lingered in the air, a reminder that Aisha wasn't alone, but this fight was hers to wage. Back in the dining room, Vikram's voice carried, his Hindi sharp as he leaned toward John Reynolds. These Americans think hiring people like her is equality, he sneered, gesturing at Aisha as she approached with a fresh platter of saffron rice. In India, we know better. Some are born to serve. The businessmen shifted uncomfortably, their laughter thin. John, his brow furrowed, tried to pivot. Vikram, about the contract terms. But Vikram waved him off, his silk suit rustling. Later. Let me enjoy this. He switched to broken English, calling to Aisha. More rice, quick. You're slow like you don't know the job. His grin was predatory, but Aisha's face remained a mask of calm, her uniform pristine, her movements fluid. She served the rice, her elegance a silent rebuke to his cruelty. Aisha's mind churned as she worked. She wasn't just enduring, she was observing, cataloging. Vikram's arrogance wasn't just personal, it was a betrayal of the culture he claimed to represent. She recalled a Diwali celebration in New Delhi, the glow of oil lamps, the shared laughter across cultures. Vikram, with his wealth and disdain, mocked that spirit. Her book, tentatively titled Satyam, Truth and Difference, would dissect men like him, those who used heritage as a weapon while ignoring its depth. She'd chosen this job to study prejudice up close, but tonight it was more than research. It was a gauntlet thrown at her feet. As she cleared plates, her phone vibrated. A message from Dr. Priya Sharma, her mentor from the University of Chicago. Aisha had texted her during a brief pause, hinting at Vikram's behavior. Send me everything, Priya's message read. Patel's under scrutiny for unethical deals. This could be big. Aisha's pulse quickened. Priya, a renowned scholar of Indian culture, had connections to media and community leaders. Aisha's fingers hovered over her phone, the recording ready to send. But she hesitated, aware of the risk. Exposing Vikram could cost her this job, or worse, drag her back into the spotlight that had burned her before. Yet the fire in her chest, the same fire that had carried her through New Delhi's challenges, urged her forward. She glanced at the dining room, where Vikram's laughter rang out, oblivious to the storm he'd ignited. Aisha's beauty, her sleek hair, and light uniform made her a beacon in the room, but it was her mind that was her true weapon. She remembered a line from Tagore, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. Tonight she'd hold her head high, not just for herself, but for every person Vikram had dismissed. As she stepped back into the fray, her smile was no longer just a mask. It was a promise. Vikram thought he was untouchable, but Aisha was already forging the blade that would cut through his arrogance. The night was young, and Saffron Heights was about to become a stage for a reckoning. Aisha Carter's cream-colored uniform glowed under the soft lights of Saffron Heights as she glided back to the VIP table. Her sleek, straight hair tied in a flawless bun, a symbol of her unyielding poise. Vikram Patel's Hindi insults still lingered in her mind, each word a barb she'd cataloged with precision. Her phone, tucked in her pocket, hummed with the weight of his recorded venom, a silent ally in her brewing plan. The billionaire's laughter rang out, sharp and careless, as he leaned toward his table of American businessmen, their faces taut with the effort to appease him. Aisha's dark eyes, sharp as a blade, caught every nuance. The way John Reynolds fidgeted with his cufflinks, the way Mark Sullivan's forced smile faltered. They were pawns in Vikram's game, but she was no pawn. She was a queen, waiting for the right move. America's so naive, Vikram sneered in Hindi, swirling his wineglass. They think putting someone like her in a fancy uniform means progress. In India, she'd be scrubbing floors, not serving saffron rice. The businessmen chuckled, their discomfort palpable, none understanding the language but sensing the cruelty. John tried again to steer the conversation. Vikram, about the zoning permits for the new project. But Vikram cut him off with a wave. his silk suit catching the light. "Relax, John. Enjoy the show." He turned to Aisha, switching to mocking English. "Rice girl, you know what's in this? Or you just carry plates?" His grin was a challenge, daring her to falter. Aisha set down a fresh bowl of saffron rice. Her movements as smooth as ever, her beauty a quiet defiance. "It's basmati, infused with saffron and cardamom, sir," she replied in crisp English, her voice steady, almost musical. "Would you like to know the spices used in the paneer tikka as well?" The table fell silent for a heartbeat, Vikram's smirk twitching. He hadn't expected her to answer with such confidence. "No," he snapped, reverting to Hindi. "She thinks she's smart, this Bandaria. Probably learned a few words to impress." The laughter from his companions was weaker now, Mark's eyes darting to Aisha with a flicker of guilt. Across the room, Maria, Aisha's fellow server, caught her eye, her brow furrowed with concern. "You okay?" she mouthed, balancing a tray of naan. Aisha gave a subtle nod, her bun unmoving, her composure a shield. But inside, her pulse thrummed with contained fury. She'd faced men like Vikram before, men who saw her skin and uniform and assumed ignorance. In New Delhi, she'd silenced skeptics with her knowledge, once explaining the economic impact of Diwali festivals to a room of trade officials. Now, Vikram's ignorance was her opportunity. Her phone recorded every word, but she wanted more than evidence. She wanted to expose him in a way he'd never forget. As she cleared a plate, her fingers brushed the phone, and she glanced at the restaurant's presentation system, a sleek screen used for private events mounted above the bar. An idea sparked. If she could access it, Vikram's own words could play for all to see. The risk was high. Tampering with equipment could cost her job, but the reward was justice. She caught Maria's eye again, signaling toward the screen. Maria, quick to understand, nodded slightly, her loyalty a spark of warmth in the cold tension of the night. Vikram, oblivious, raised his voice in Hindi. "Look at her, strutting like she belongs here. In my country, people know their place." He pulled out his phone, filming Aisha as she served, narrating in Hindi. "This is how Americans waste potential, letting monkeys wear uniforms." The businessman shifted, John's jaw tightening, but none spoke up. Aisha's heart pounded, not from fear but from clarity. She recognized Vikram now, not just as a billionaire, but as a man she'd corresponded with during her embassy days, negotiating terms for his company's expansion. He hadn't known her face then, only her name, and now he saw only a server. That blindness would be his undoing. Aisha stepped away, her uniform pristine despite the long shift, and approached Maria near the bar. "I need access to the presentation system," she whispered. Maria's eyes widened. "You're going to do something big, aren't you?" Aisha's smile was tight but determined. "He's digging his own grave. I'm just handing him the shovel." Maria hesitated, then nodded. "I'll get the access code from the manager's office. Be careful, Aisha." As Maria slipped away, Aisha's thoughts raced. Priya Sharma's message from earlier burned in her mind. Vikram was under scrutiny for unethical deals. Her recording was dynamite, but playing it publicly could ignite a firestorm. The dining room buzzed with oblivious chatter, but for Aisha, every sound sharpened. The clink of glasses, Vikram's grating laugh, her beauty, her sleek bun, her light uniform. They were her armor, but her mind was her blade. She recalled a New Delhi mentor's words, "Truth is a weapon, but timing is its edge." Tonight, she'd hone that edge. Vikram thought he held all the power, but Aisha was rewriting the rules. As she returned to the table, her smile was a promise of retribution, her every step a countdown to a reckoning that would shake Saffron Heights to its core. Aisha Carter's cream-colored uniform caught the soft glow of Saffron Heights chandeliers as she moved with deliberate grace, her sleek, straight hair tied in a neat bun, a beacon of composure amid the storm she was brewing. Vikram Patel's Hindi insult still rang in her ears, his latest video, calling her a monkey in a uniform, burning in her phone's memory. The dining room pulsed with the chatter of Chicago's elite, but for Aisha, every sound was a thread in the web she was weaving. Her dark eyes, sharp with intent, darted to the presentation screen above the bar, its potential humming in her mind. Maria's promise to secure the access code was a lifeline, but the risk loomed large. Exposure could cost her job, maybe more. Yet the fire in her chest, fueled by Vikram's arrogance, left no room for hesitation. She approached the VIP table where Vikram lounged, his silk suit a stark contrast to his venomous words. "Americans are so blind," he muttered in Hindi, swirling his glass. "They think a fancy restaurant makes her equal. She's nothing but a servant." The businessmen, John Reynolds, Mark Sullivan, and the others, forced thin smiles, their discomfort growing. John's fingers twitched on his napkin, his earlier attempt to pivot to business ignored. Aisha set down a tray of naan, her movements fluid, her beauty a silent rebuke to Vikram's cruelty. "More naan, sir?" she asked in crisp English, her voice calm but edged with defiance. Vikram smirked, switching to broken English. "You know naan? Or just carry like a trained pet?" His laugh was sharp, but Aisha's smile didn't waver, her bun gleaming as she turned away. In the shadows of the service corridor, Maria caught up with her, slipping a folded note into her hand. "The access code," Maria whispered, her eyes wide with excitement and fear. "You sure about this, Aisha?" Aisha's fingers closed around the note, her heart pounding. "He's been sure all night," she replied, her voice low but resolute. Maria hesitated, then squeezed her arm. "You're braver than I." Aisha's lips curved, her elegance undimmed by the weight of her plan. She'd already sent a text to Dr. Priya Sharma, her mentor from the University of Chicago, with a sample of Vikram's recorded insults. Priya's reply had been swift. "He's under investigation for shady deals. This could ruin him. Send everything." Aisha's pulse quickened. She was no longer just a server. She was a strategist, and Saffron Heights was her battlefield. Her mind flashed to a moment in New Delhi, standing before a room of trade officials, quoting Tagore, "Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high." That courage had carried her through skepticism and prejudice, earning her respect in a world that often dismissed her. Now Vikram's ignorance of her past, her role in facilitating his company's deals, was his fatal flaw. She'd corresponded with him years ago, her emails signed A. Carter, her expertise shaping his profits. He saw only a black woman in a uniform, but she saw him clearly, a man whose wealth couldn't mask his emptiness. As she slipped back into the dining room, her phone vibrated. Another message from Priya. "Anita Rao, a Tribune reporter, is at the restaurant. She's interested. Meet her?" Aisha's breath caught. Anita Rao, a journalist known for exposing corporate corruption, was a wild card. Meeting her could amplify her plan, but it raised the stakes. She glanced at the presentation screen, its blank surface a canvas for justice. If she could play Vikram's video there, the entire restaurant, Chicago's elite, including Anita, would witness his downfall. But the manager's office loomed in her mind, a reminder of the consequences if caught. Her uniform, pristine and light, felt like armor as she weighed her options. She wasn't just fighting for herself, but for every person Vikram had belittled, every culture he'd twisted to justify his prejudice. Vikram's voice cut through her thoughts, his Hindi sharp as he filmed her again. "See this banderia strutting around," he narrated, his phone angled to catch her serving. "In America, they think this is equality." John Reynolds shifted, his face tight, while Mark muttered something inaudible, his eyes avoiding Aisha's. She caught Priya Malhotra's gaze from a nearby table, the activist's phone subtly raised, recording Vikram's performance. Aisha's heart lifted. Another ally, another layer to her plan. She nodded faintly to Priya, her bun unmoving, her beauty a quiet power. The activist's presence was a gift, amplifying the pressure on Vikram. As Aisha cleared a glass, her fingers brushed the note with the access code. The screen was her stage, but timing was everything. She needed Anita Rao to see it, needed Priya Malhotra's video to spread, needed Priya Sharma's connections to ensure the fallout reached far beyond this room. Vikram thought he was untouchable, his wealth a shield, but Aisha was dismantling it with every step. Her elegance, her sleek hair, her light uniform, they were more than appearances. They were a declaration that she belonged. As she moved toward the bar, her resolve hardened. The night was shifting, and Vikram's empire was about to feel the tremors of a truth he couldn't silence. Aisha Carter's cream-colored uniform shimmered as she stepped toward the bar at Saffron Heights. Her sleek, straight hair tied in a neat bun, a silent emblem of her unshakable resolve. The weight of Vikram Patel's Hindi insults, each bandaraya a wound, fueled her every move, but her face remained a mask of calm, her dark eyes blazing with purpose. The note with the presentation screen's access code burned in her pocket, Maria's risky gift, now her key to justice. The dining room hummed with oblivious chatter, but for Aisha, it was a battlefield, and the screen above the bar was her weapon. Vikram's latest video, still filming her as she served, was a ticking bomb, and she was ready to detonate it. Priya Malhotra's subtle nod from a nearby table, her phone capturing Vikram's cruelty, and Dr. Priya Sharma's message about Anita Rao, the Tribune reporter, were threads in the net closing around him. Vikram lounged at the VIP table, his silk suit gleaming as he narrated in Hindi, his phone angled at Aisha. "This monkey thinks she's part of the elite," he sneered, oblivious to her comprehension. "America's delusion. Dressing them up doesn't change what they are." John Reynolds' jaw tightened, his earlier guilt now a visible strain, while Mark Sullivan stared at his plate, his laughter long gone. The other businessmen shifted, their discomfort a palpable fog. Isha set down a fresh carafe of masala chai, her movements precise, her beauty a quiet defiance. Vikram's eyes flicked to her, and he switched to broken English, his voice dripping with mockery. "Chai girl, you dance? Show us something fun, like a monkey." The room seemed to hold its breath. Aisha paused, her hand steady on the carafe, her bun catching the chandelier's glow. She straightened, her smile sharp as a blade, and responded in flawless Hindi. "Mr. Patel, I fear you've mistaken this restaurant for a circus. Perhaps I should quote Satyam Eva Jayate from the Mundaka Upanishad to remind you, truth always triumphs." The table froze. Vikram's phone slipped slightly, his face draining of color. You speak Hindi?" he stammered, his voice a mix of shock and dread. Aisha's eyes locked onto his, her voice steady but laced with fire. "Not just Hindi, but the culture you claim to own. Tell me, Mr. Patel, do you know the rituals of Diwali, or do you only know how to insult?" Gasps rippled through the dining room as heads turned. John Reynolds stood, his voice hoarse. "You're Aisha Carter? I read your report on Indian investment trends at the embassy." Aisha nodded, her uniform pristine, her presence commanding. 3 years in New Delhi, facilitating deals for companies like yours, Mr. Patel. You profited from my work, yet here I am, just a monkey to you. Vikram's mouth opened, but no words came. Aisha moved swiftly to the bar, where Maria, wide-eyed, handed her the control panel. With a few taps, the presentation screen flickered to life. In Vikram's video, his voice sneering "Bandaria" and mocking equality, played for all to see. The restaurant fell silent, then erupted in murmurs of outrage. Priya Malhotra, the activist, stood, her phone still recording, her voice ringing out. "This is a disgrace to our values. Ahimsa, respect, unity." Real diners turned, some filming, others whispering. Anita Rao, the reporter, leaned forward at her table, her notebook open, her eyes sharp. Vikram scrambled to his feet, his silk suit suddenly ill-fitting on his shrinking frame. "It was a joke," he shouted, but his voice cracked, drowned by the screen's looping evidence. Aisha stood tall, her beauty radiant, her uniform a symbol of her strength. "Truth doesn't need wealth to shine, Mr. Patel," she said in Hindi, her words cutting deeper than his ever could. John Reynolds approached her, his face pale. "Aisha, I'm sorry. I should have spoken up." She met his gaze, her bun unmoving, her voice calm. "It's not just about me, John. It's about everyone you let him demean." Maria squeezed her hand, whispering, "You're incredible." Priya Malhotra joined them, her eyes fierce. "I'm posting this online. The world needs to see." Aisha nodded, her heart racing but her resolve ironclad. She sent the full recording to Priya Sharma, knowing Anita Rao's presence could amplify the fallout. Vikram, cornered by stares, grabbed his phone and stormed toward the exit, his empire teetering on the edge of collapse. Aisha's chest heaved, Not from fear, but from the release of a long-held burden. Her sleek hair and light uniform stood out against the chaos, a testament to her unbreakable spirit. She'd turned Vikram's weapon against him, and the restaurant, once a stage for his arrogance, was now a witness to her triumph. But the battle wasn't over. Anita's pen was moving, Priya Malhotra's video was spreading, and Priya Sharma's connections were waiting. Vikram thought he'd humiliated a server, but Aisha had ignited a fire that would burn far beyond these walls. As she stepped back to the bar, her smile was no longer a mask. It was a declaration of victory, and the night was far from done. Aisha Carter stood by the bar at Saffron Heights, her cream-colored uniform pristine, her sleek straight hair tied in a neat bun, a beacon of quiet strength as the dining room buzzed with the aftershock of her confrontation. The presentation screen still looped Vikram Patel's damning video, his Hindi slurs, Banderia, servant, echoing for all to hear. The billionaire had fled, his silk suit a fleeting shadow through the glass doors, but his words lingered, a stain on the air. Aisha's dark eyes scanned the room, catching the stunned gazes of diners, some filming, others whispering. Her victory was palpable, but the weight of what came next pressed against her chest. She'd lit a fuse, and the explosion was only beginning. John Reynolds approached, his face ashen, his tie askew. "Aisha, I'm sorry," he said, his voice low. "I should have stopped him sooner." She met his gaze, her bun gleaming under the chandeliers. "It's not just about stopping him, John. It's about why you didn't." Her words were calm but piercing, and he nodded, guilt etched in his eyes. Maria, her fellow server, hovered nearby, her tray forgotten. "You were incredible," she whispered, squeezing Aisha's arm. "Everyone's talking about it." Aisha's lips curved faintly, but her focus shifted to Priya Malhotra, the activist, who was uploading her video of the confrontation to social media, her fingers flying across her phone. "This is going viral," Priya said, her voice fierce. "He can't hide from this." Across the room, Anita Rao, the Tribune reporter, scribbled furiously in her notebook, her sharp eyes darting between Aisha and the screen. She approached, her presence commanding despite her unassuming blazer. "Aisha Carter," she asked, extending a hand. "I'm Anita Rao, Chicago Tribune. I saw everything. Can we talk?" Aisha nodded, her uniform a symbol of her resilience. "After my shift," she said, her voice steady but her heart racing. Anita's smile was knowing. "This is bigger than one night. Patel's in deep trouble." Aisha sent the full recording to Dr. Priya Sharma, her mentor, who texted back, "Anita's the real deal. I'm contacting the Indian American Business Council. This could shake his empire." The restaurant manager, Clara Evans, hurried over, her face a mix of concern and awe. "Aisha, what you did, it's extraordinary, but we need to talk about the screen." Aisha's stomach tightened. Her job was on the line, but Clara's eyes softened. "I'm not firing you. This place needs to change." Aisha exhaled, her bun unmoving, her beauty radiant even in the chaos. "Thank you," she said, her voice firm. "But this isn't just about me. It's about everyone he's hurt." Clara nodded, glancing at the screen, where Vikram's video still played, a testament to his downfall. Priya Malhotra joined them, her phone buzzing with notifications. "It's trending already," she said, showing Aisha the post. "Billionaire Vikram Patel exposed for racist remarks at Saffron Heights." Comments flooded in, outrage, support, calls for accountability. Priya's voice carried the weight of her activism. "This violates ahimsa, the principle of non-harm. He's shamed our community." Isha felt a surge of gratitude. Her time in New Delhi had taught her the power of cultural values like ahimsa, and now Priya was wielding it to amplify her fight. Diners began approaching, some offering words of support, others snapping photos of Aisha, her light uniform and poised demeanor making her a focal point of the night's upheaval. Aisha's thoughts raced. Vikram's empire was built on connections, but those connections were fragile when exposed to the truth. Her work at the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi had shown her how reputations crumbled under scrutiny. She'd facilitated deals for men like Vikram, men who never saw her face, only her expertise. Now her face, her beauty, her strength was undeniable. She caught John Reynolds' eye, who was speaking quietly with his colleagues, their faces grim. "We're pulling our proposal," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Patel's not who we thought." Aisha nodded, her heart steadying. The businessman's retreat was a crack in Vikram's armor, but she knew the real blow would come from the world beyond these walls. Anita Rao lingered, her pen pausing. "Aisha, your story's not just about tonight. You're a scholar, aren't you? New Delhi, Chicago. What's your angle?" Aisha's smile was subtle, her bun catching the light. "I'm writing a book," she said, "about prejudice, power, and truth." Anita's eyes lit up. "That's my headline." As Aisha returned to her duties, her uniform pristine despite the chaos, she felt the weight of eyes on her. Not with pity, but with respect. Priya Sharma's next message buzzed. "The Business Council wants the recordings. This could spark a formal investigation." Aisha's resolve hardened. Vikram had thought her invisible, but she was now the center of a storm that would reshape his world. The dining room, once a stage for Vikram's arrogance, was now a crucible for truth. Aisha's beauty, her sleek hair, her light uniform, they were more than appearances. They were a declaration of her power. As she cleared a final glass, her fingers steady, she knew the night was just the beginning. Vikram's empire was teetering, and the ripples of her defiance were spreading far beyond Saffron Heights. The world was watching, and Aisha was ready to speak. The air in Saffron Heights still crackled with the aftershocks of Aisha Carter's stand, her cream-colored uniform a beacon of defiance as she moved through the dining room, her sleek, straight hair tied in a neat bun, untouched by the chaos she'd unleashed. Vikram Patel's absence left a void, his hurried exit a faint echo in the glass doors, but his recorded slurs still lingered in the minds of those who'd witnessed the screen's truth. Aisha's dark eyes, sharp and steady, caught the glances of diners, some admiring, some curious, as she cleared a final table. The weight of her actions settled over her, not as doubt but as a quiet certainty. She'd struck a blow, and the tremors were spreading far beyond the restaurant's gilded walls. By morning, Anita Rao's article hit the Chicago Tribune's front page. "Billionaire Vikram Patel exposed for racist remarks at Saffron Heights." The piece, sharp and unflinching, detailed Vikram's Hindi insults, banderia, servant, and Aisha's poised response, her fluency in Hindi, and her embassy credentials laid bare. Priya Malhotra's viral video, now at 1 million views, fueled the fire, with hashtags like "Where Were Our Saffron Heights Scandal" trending across social media. Comments poured in, "Disgusting behavior. Aisha's a hero." The Indian-American community, led by Priya, held a press conference outside the restaurant, their banner quoting "Satyam Eva Jayate," "Truth always triumphs." Priya's voice rang out, invoking ahimsa. "Patel's actions betray our values. We stand with Aisha." Aisha, back at her small apartment, sat at her desk, her uniform neatly folded, her bun loosened, but her resolve intact. Her phone buzzed with messages from Dr. Priya Sharma. "The Indian American Business Council is launching an ethics probe. Your recordings are key." Aisha's heart raced. She'd sent the full evidence to Priya, knowing it could unravel Vikram's empire. The Tribune article quoted her, "Truth doesn't need wealth to shine." Her words, once confined to her book's draft, were now a rallying cry. She glanced at her laptop, where Satyam, Truth and Difference, was taking shape, each chapter a testament to nights like this. Vikram, holed up in his penthouse, watched the news with a sinking dread. His silk suit, discarded on a chair, seemed a relic of a life unraveling. The Business Council's probe was a death knell. His company lost $600 million in contracts as partners, including John Reynolds' firm, pulled out. "We can't align with this," John had texted his board, his guilt from that night now in action. Vikram's phone rang with a call from his COO, Sarah Klein. "The board's suspending your role," she said, her voice cold. "Step back, Vikram, or it's worse." He slammed the phone down, his reflection in the window a shadow of the titan he'd been. Alone, he replayed Priya Malhotra's video, his own voice mocking Aisha. For a fleeting moment, he saw his error. Not just the scandal, but the emptiness of his arrogance. Yet pride choked his remorse. Priya Malhotra's activism didn't stop at the press conference. She filed a civil suit against Vikram, alleging discriminatory conduct in a business setting, backed by Aisha's recordings and Anita's reporting. The Indian-American community, stung by Vikram's betrayal, organized a Diwali event to promote unity, inviting Aisha as a guest speaker. "We honor truth," Priya declared, her words echoing Aisha's stand. Diners from that night, some now vocal online, shared stories of Aisha's grace, her light uniform, her poised bun, her unflinching gaze. One tweet read, "She served chai and justice in one night." Aisha, reading the news, felt a mix of vindication and weight. Her beauty, her sleek hair, her strength, they'd become symbols, but the spotlight was familiar. In New Delhi, she'd navigated scrutiny, her dark skin a challenge to some, her brilliance a rebuttal to all. Now her phone buzzed with an email from the U.S. State Department, a job offer to return as a cultural advisor. She hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of her laptop. This wasn't just about her career. It was about the book, about Jamal, about every person who'd been dismissed as less than. She replied to Priya Sharma, "I'm in. Let's make this count." Vikram's penthouse grew quieter, his calls unanswered, his empire crumbling. A Diwali invitation arrived, but he tossed it aside, unable to face the community he'd shamed. His apology video, posted late, was met with scorn. Too little, too late. He stared at Aisha's words in the Tribune, her elegance haunting him. She'd been invisible to him, but now she was everywhere. On screens, in headlines, in the mirror of his failure. The city he'd once owned was turning its back, and the truth Aisha wielded was sharper than any deal he'd ever closed. Aisha stepped outside, the Chicago wind cool against her skin. Her fight wasn't over. Priya's suit, Anita's articles, the Diwali event, they were steps towards something bigger. Her uniform, her bun, her beauty, they were her armor, but her mind was her sword. Vikram's fall was a warning to others, and Aisha was ready to carry the torch forward, her truth a flame that wouldn't fade. Aisha Carter stepped into the spotlight of the Diwali event in Chicago, her presence commanding, her sleek, straight hair tied in a neat bun, a quiet nod to the grace she'd carried through the storm at Saffron Heights. Gone was her cream-colored server uniform, replaced by a tailored blazer, but her beauty and poise remained, a beacon for the crowd gathered to celebrate unity and accountability. The fallout from Vikram Patel's exposure had reshaped the city's pulse. His empire was crumbling, his name a cautionary tale. Isha's dark eyes scanned the room, catching Priya Malhotra's proud nod and Anita Rao's knowing smile from the front row. Her stand that night had ignited a movement, and now, as she prepared to speak, the weight of her journey felt both heavy and liberating. The venue, adorned with oil lamps and marigold garlands, glowed with the spirit of Diwali. Priya Malhotra, the activist who'd amplified Aisha's truth, introduced her. Aisha Carter showed us that dignity doesn't bow to wealth. She embodies Satyam Eva Jayate. Truth always triumphs. Applause erupted, and Aisha stepped to the podium, her voice steady, resonant. "Truth doesn't need a title or a bank account," she began. "It needs courage, the kind we all carry when we choose to see each other as human." The crowd leaned in, her words weaving a spell, her elegance a testament to the power she'd reclaimed. Weeks had passed since Anita Rao's Tribune article set off a firestorm. Vikram's $600 million in lost contracts was just the start. His board had permanently ousted him, and Priya Malhotra's lawsuit gained traction, with depositions citing Aisha's recordings. Social media buzzed with her story, the viral video now at 30 million views, hashtags like Aisha Carter inspires trending globally. The Indian-American community, stung by Vikram's betrayal, had rallied. Their Diwali event, a public stand against prejudice. Aisha's book, Satyam, Truth and Difference, was nearly complete, its pages weaving her embassy days with the lessons of Saffron Heights. Publishers were circling, drawn to her voice, sharp, poetic, unapologetic. John Reynolds, now a vocal supporter, approached her after the speech. "Aisha, you changed how I see business," he said, his handshake firm. "Prejudice is a liability we can't afford." She nodded, her bun catching the lamplight. "It's not just business, John. It's life. Nearby, Maria, her friend from the restaurant, beamed. "You're a star," she whispered, hugging Aisha tightly. Clara Evans, Saffron Heights manager, had implemented the Aisha Carter Protocol, a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, now adopted by restaurants across Chicago. The venue itself had become a pilgrimage site for activists, its tables booked weeks in advance by those inspired by Aisha's stand. Aisha's phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Priya Sharma. "State Department confirmed your advisor role. 50% raise. Congratulations." Aisha smiled, her heart full. She'd accepted the offer, returning to diplomacy not as a vindication, but as a continuation of her fight. Her time in New Delhi had taught her the power of bridges, cultural, human, and she'd build them again, this time on her terms. Her brother Jamal, now thriving in college, had texted earlier. "You're my hero, sis." That meant more than any title. Her book, set to publish next year, would carry her story further, blending Tagore's poetry with her own, a call to dismantle prejudice, one truth at a time. Across town, Vikram Patel sat alone in his dim penthouse, the city's skyline mocking his fall. The Diwali invitation lay unopened, his isolation self-inflicted. News reports replayed his failed apology, the public scorn relentless. No remorse, just excuses. A fleeting moment of clarity had struck him weeks ago, watching Aisha's grace in the viral video, but pride had smothered it. His empire, once a titan, was a husk. Partners gone, friends silent, his name synonymous with shame. The Indian-American community's rejection stung most. Their Diwali event was a mirror to his failure. He'd underestimated Aisha, seeing only a server, not the scholar who'd shaped his deals years ago. Now her words haunted him. Truth doesn't need wealth to shine. Aisha, back at the podium, closed her speech with a line from Tagore. "Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high." The crowd rose, their applause a thunderous affirmation. Anita Rao, scribbling notes, whispered to Priya Malhotra, "She's rewriting the narrative." Priya nodded, her eyes bright. "She's rewriting the world." Aisha stepped down, her beauty radiant, her spirit unbroken. Saffron Heights, once a battlefield, was now a symbol of change. The Aisha Carter Protocol was spreading nationwide, a testament to her impact. As she left the event, the Chicago night crisp against her skin, Aisha felt the weight of her journey lift. Her sleek bun, her poised demeanor, they were no longer just armor but a crown. She'd faced Vikram's venom and turned it into a beacon for others. Her book, her new role, her voice, they were tools to build a world where dignity wasn't earned but inherent. The city sparkled below, and Aisha knew this was not an end, but a beginning. Truth had triumphed, and she was its herald, ready to carry the light forward.